The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Hearing loss. How careful would you say you are, Pat, about protecting your hearing around loud noises?
Not too careful. I gotta be honest. No. I know you're very particular about your hearing.
I'm very careful. Ever since I started playing drums and I realized that after the first day, this is really loud, I would always practice with earplugs. I started wearing earplugs whenever I would go to concerts. And it's been a while because I've been playing less drums lately, but I used to go every couple years to an audiologist, I think is the way it's said.
Okay.
Just to have my hearing tested to see if I was experiencing any hearing loss. And I am very careful because it really is easy to experience irreversible hearing loss. And in fact, there's an article in the Washington Post pointing out that 40 million American adults have lost some hearing because of noise, and half of them suffered the damage outside of the workplace. There's sort of a conventional wisdom, which often is not actually that wise, that really, if you're not around loud noises at work, like in a factory or something like that, that you're not really exposed to noises that are too loud and could cause hearing loss. But everything from constant exposure to leaf blowers at home, if you're using a leaf blower without earplugs, sirens, going to concerts regularly, all of that stuff can cause hearing loss, and 40 million American adults are having some degree of it.
Yeah, I used to play the drums myself, and whenever I would play, I would always put those big headphones on. Same thing for mowing the lawn. But, you know, I guess maybe now I'm becoming more conscious of the fact that I should pay attention to my hearing. But in my youth, I didn't really care that much.
You can't get it back. It's irreversible. That's the thing. And one thing that really did it for me is I read about how big rig truck drivers would often have hearing loss in their left ear.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, what comes to mind?
I mean, is there a particular sound the truck makes that maybe because it's reflecting off the window?
You're right in thinking about the window, but it's if you drive with the window down often.
Okay.
The constant traffic noise that's coming in,
really?
And the sound of the blowing wind and all of that. If you think about 40 hours a week driving around with the window open on your left side, that will actually cause hearing loss in your left ear over time.
That's pretty fascinating, yeah. And I'm sure you're going through a lot of different parts of the country where it's nice out, you want to put the windows down. I love doing that.
So, I don't know how many people in our audience. I mean, I'm also very careful, like even with my earphone that I wear to hear the guests and the clips and stuff like that. Pat can attest to this. I very often ask him to turn it down. I try to have it at the lowest volume at which I can comfortably hear the guest.
Right, and even on your phone, if I don't know if you've noticed this because maybe you're not turning the volume up high enough when you have headphones in.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, maybe it's like when it's like 3/4 of the way up, it'll warn you that you're putting the volume up at a level that could damage your hearing. And I usually go like one tick ahead of that.
Well, what that doesn't account for is that sometimes what you're listening to is particularly quiet. So I have a pretty good sense of like, there will be sometimes like maybe, I don't know if it's Spotify or maybe my Sirius radio app on my phone. I think the Sirius one, that the volume is just very low. So I know that when I'm turning it up into the quote danger zone, that it's actually not that loud because the source is very low. But yes, it's good to have that on there again as sort of a reminder.
Maybe I'm not so particular about it too because I'm thinking, this could be naive, but I'm thinking, 40, 50 years down the road, if
they'll be able to fix your hearing.
Yeah, I mean, there could be medical breakthroughs by then that could fix my hearing.
I hold the same hope with a lot of different things, but I don't actually disregard precautions now. I say, you know what? If there's some bonus where it can be fixed in the future, that's great, but I'm not going to count on that right now.
Right, because I guess by that logic, you can just eat whatever you want all day, every day, junk food, and hope that down the road they'll come up with medical breakthroughs.
Not the way I live. I don't know. Some people maybe would call it not living on the edge, but...
we need an acronym for that, like the opposite of YOLO.
The opposite of YOLO, yeah.
Not living on the edge.
NOLO. Ooh. Not living on... No, that's NOLATO. I don't even
doesn't roll off the tongue as much.
No, it doesn't exactly have a zing to it. Wikipedia editors have voted to ban the Daily Mail as a source for Wikipedia in all but what they are calling exceptional circumstances because they have deemed the news group generally unreliable. This is being called unusual for Wikipedia, which rarely puts like a blanket ban on a publication. They usually will say, well, we have to look specifically at what it actually says. and they also still allow links to both RT and Fox News, both of which have been concerning sources as supposedly a fact-based sources for citations on Wikipedia. But the Daily Mail is out, and I would say generally, I mean, we don't use Fox News as a source on the show. We don't use RT as a source on the show. We don't use Al Jazeera as a source on the show. And as a sort of, it's not official, but I would not report on stories if they are only in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, even if the Daily Mail has a quote, would they not even consider using that as a source? Because unless they're, completely lying, that quote is directly from someone, and, that can be seen as credible no matter where it's coming from.
You're saying if the Daily Mail contains a primary quote of someone they spoke
Yeah,
with.
like President Trump said this,
Very often they would be quoting some other source, which is actually the origin of the quote. So the Daily Mail might write an article where they quote someone as reported by Time Magazine. And in that case, you would just source Time Magazine. You wouldn't even need to source Daily Mail. But I see what you're saying. If someone directly spoke to the Daily Mail, would it just be fundamentally unreliable?
It seems so, because they seem like they're having a blanket policy against this website. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know.
We don't have any sort of there's not it's not published anywhere what sources we won't use, but I've just developed a sort of implicit policy over time. I wonder if it would be useful or in any way useful. I don't know if useful is the right word, but would we be communicating some kind of transparency if we were to say we don't source stories from X sources? I don't know. I don't know that we need to do that.
I think maybe people would criticize you for hiding the real truth. I mean, it's interesting you listed RT and Al Jazeera because those are both government-run news sites to some extent. Al Jazeera being from Saudi Arabia?
I believe Qatar.
Qatar.
That's not
yes.
actually why. I mean, I've just found that a lot of their reporting is very similar to RT in sort of its conspiratorial nature. And let me put it this way. I've never come across an instance where there was a story that was only reported by RT or Al Jazeera that I felt was actually a story that warranted coverage based on the knowable facts. So I've always been in situations where if I hear about a story through a viral link that comes from Al Jazeera or RT, I'm able to find other sources that I find more reliable and then source them that way, if that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah, I think a lot of people may not want to use RT or Al Jazeera because they have government funding from those countries.
Yeah.
But I guess by that same logic, I mean, you could throw out PBS and NPR because they also receive federal funds from the United States government.
Different, though.
You think
I think
so?
it's very. I think the way that PBS receives some funding from the government is more like the way BBC receives funding from taxpayers. I don't know that it's the same as Russian or Qatari billionaires saying, here, take money to basically be, helping us with our narrative, so to speak. That's interesting, though. Interesting comparison. Pugs. Pugs are anatomical disasters. And there is now a call in a Guardian article that has been anonymously written to actually speak out, have vets speak out about how pugs should be, I don't know about eliminated. They obviously are not advocating for the killing of all pugs, but that pugs should not continue to be bred in the way that they are being bred. I am completely against these designer dog breeds that, in order to get a certain look, are actually physically unhealthy. French bulldogs are an example. My girlfriend loves French bulldogs. French bulldogs have been selectively bred in a way that they have major breeding problems, number one. And number two, and I know that this is common with many breeds of dog, they can't even give birth naturally anymore because of the shape that they have been sort of selectively bred to achieve. Have you been around a lot of French bulldogs?
No, I honestly, even just hearing that, I don't know my dog breeds that well.
Oh, okay.
I gotta
The French
say.
bulldog is like the littlest of the bulldogs with the kind of triangular, perky ears. It has
Yep.
a face that's similar to an English bulldog, but it kind of like a smaller, more flattened version. And every time I'm near one, and there's a lot of them in my neighborhood in Boston, you can hear that they're having trouble breathing.
Really?
Yeah, you just hear this sort of like wheezing noise that has been bred into that flat face. And this is also an issue if you compare an English bulldog today to one 40 or 50 years ago. It's a completely different dog. The flatter face, the more difficult to walk, a sort of arrangement of the dog's legs. it's not good for the dogs, and I'm completely against it. It more applies to the toy breeds. There's those little tiny dogs that are bred to be really, really small, and sometimes with facial features that make it hard for the dog to breathe or eat. Sometimes with these really stubby legs. That's another one. The hot dog. I guess it's a dachshund, or there might be a couple other breeds that look similar to that. They've been selectively bred over time to have stubbier and stubbier legs, to where the legs actually are not really that efficient or useful for the dog in even just like basic dog locomotion. And I'm completely against all of it.
And you point out toy dogs, which are selectively bred to achieve a certain look. It's not just about looks. I mean, it's also about things like competition, racing. I mean, greyhounds come to mind. Greyhounds frequently have issues with bone cancer. I know. I mean, pretty much any dog breed is going to have some sort of ailment.
Predisposition.
Yeah. So German Shepherds, I think, have a real trouble with their hips.
Yeah, but see, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say German Shepherds are an example of a dog that tends to be predisposed to hip issues later in their life. But I don't believe that it's related to selective breeding to achieve a particular look, is it? I mean, I don't know for sure, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that would be sort of different. Yeah, I've been reading a lot about this, and also the whole concept of like a pure breed dog and pedigree and that type of thing, where there's the misconception from a lot of people that it's some kind of objective thing. When you look at dogs are like 99.9 or some very high percentage gray wolf DNA. And the differences among different, quote, breeds are in this like tiny 0.1% of the DNA. And the idea of a pure breed dog, where are you drawing the line, right? Because at some point it's a variation of a gray wolf.
I mean, people say that about, the human race too, that someone's purely white or purely black, whatever.
Yeah.
Not at the risk of sounding like a breedist, but I don't really care for the look of pugs that much.
Oh yeah, I don't either. But that's a completely different thing. I mean, regardless of whether I like the look. Like, for example, French bulldogs are kind of cute, but I'm against them conceptually because of what's being done to their heads. Yeah. Anyway, that's me on my animal rights soapbox. This is basically as far as I go. I know sometimes people say I need to do more animal rights stuff. And obviously I'm completely against abusing animals, no doubt about it. But this is a good issue for me. Breed specific legislation is another way I get involved in animal rights.
We've covered elephants being poached to the point where some elephants are being born without the tusks.
Indeed. Yep. All right, I guess that's it. Send me your thoughts about this. I am against pugs. Full stop.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.